So Monzo was like a really great place to work. I think they had a bunch of values, but they had this one absolute standout value that was like pretty radical and honestly a little bit uncomfortable when I joined the company. And they had this value called default transparency. And
Okay.
the kind of principle behind that was, in a lot of places, like it's totally fine to do things, quietly, and like you DM people and you do things like that, and then you sort of decide if you want to make things public, and so it'd be like, well, now we'll talk about it. And Monzo kind of like inverted that, and it was like the default mode of operation for the company was everything would be public. So it was like public channels for everything. You had to have a really good case for doing a private channel in Slack, for example. But it went as far as like email. So if you were sending an email to someone, you had to copy in a Google group of whatever the right context was for that thing, and then anyone in the company could subscribe to that. And it went quite far and wide. Like in the early days, it was like the founders would be communicating with people and copying it into like lists so anyone could see. Obviously, there's like a lens there where it's like, well, there's
HR issues or
HR
something,
issues. Someone's doing a fundraising round and you don't want it to bleed out into the company early days. But people it was very like transparent, and like funding rounds are a good example, which was, Tom used to stand up and give lots of insight to the whole company at all hands before things were like finalized, and be like, I'm trusting you with this information. This is like part of our values, default transparency. And as I said, it felt pretty uncomfortable when I first joined in some regards, because I'm like, this is kind of like, I feel very sort of seen here.
Yeah.
And then when I think you actually look at the benefits that come from it, it's actually a phenomenal value. And the value that I'd see there is like essentially the more sort of, I guess like the more active like collisions you can kind of enable around an organization, the more you can sort of spark good input and good sort of like, basically it's like positive serendipity, I guess, which is like, if I communicate with someone in another team in a public channel about something that I'm talking about, there's a chance that someone else can see that and go, oh, I have context on that thing. I've already done it, or you don't need to do this kind of thing. Obviously, there is the downside of that, which is like everyone has an opinion on everything. And that was something that Monzo had to sort of like navigate here, which was like, default to transparency doesn't mean you have to read everything. And it did sometimes feel like drinking from the fire hose. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's like, you put the onus on the individual to be like, what is the sort of sensible set of things I should read from?